Hi, everybody. Um, Welcome to our weekly training video. Sorry, I wasn't here yesterday at my normal time. We were traveling. So we've been talking about how to build confidence in our fearful dogs. But since confidence isn't a behavior, we spent a little bit of time talking about what it means to build confidence. What do we really mean when we say, I want my dog to be more confident? Last week, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess, we talked a little bit about how to define what we mean by confidence. And then we talked about some sniffing games and sniffing behaviors that at least some people in our free Facebook support group felt were indicated confidence when their dogs were sniffing in certain situations. So this week, we're going to get more into play, but let me pull up our slides here. All right. And throughout the presentation, if you have a question, go ahead and put it underneath wherever you're watching the video, and it'll pop up for me after a short delay. Okay, building confidence in fearful dogs. Has anyone here listening been trying to get their fearful dog to play more or to play at all? Go ahead and put comments in and I'll get them when they pop up for me. I know this can be a tough one if you adopt a very fearful dog and they come home and you had a lot of ideas about what it might be like to have a dog, and the dog's so scared that they won't do a lot of what we would think of as normal dog things like playing. Okay, so what is confidence? I'm not going to go over this in as great detail as we did last time because we've already covered it, but it's worth thinking about because I see often posted in online and in our free Facebook support group, oh, you need to build your dog's confidence or you need to teach your dog optimism. But confidence and optimism aren't behaviors. They're kind of constructs or labels that, looking at a dog doing some behaviors, we might say, oh, that dog looks confident. But it's hard to write a training plan for a label. How do we train something that's not a behavior? So we asked our Facebook support group folks, what do you mean when you say you want your dog to be more confident, or what does your dog look like when you think they're feeling confident or behaving confidently? And I shared this list last time, but here are just a handful of the suggestions from folks. If their dog is willing to move away from them or away from wherever they feel safe to explore or sniff, that to them, that is confidence. Body language like head up, tail wagging, smiling, looking at mom or dad, playing or chewing on a toy, relaxed body language while noticing the environment, looking around at things in the environment, recovering from a negative experience or a startle and returning to whatever behavior they were doing prior to the startle, was one way that people said, to me, that's a sign of confidence. Lying down and relaxing, instead of doing other fearful behaviors that we would call fearful, like hiding or trembling. Also, things that people in our group said, I think this means the dog is confident if they're doing that. So last week, we talked about that first one, sniffing and how to basically reinforce your dog for sniffing and exploring in different situations. And this week, we're going to talk about playing. Playing is, again, still a label, but we can get down to actual behaviors we can train here. So as a reminder, the reason we're spending a little time talking about what do we mean by confidence is because you can't train it. You can't reinforce confidence because it's not a behavior. We have to know what behaviors we actually want our dogs to do. Same thing with optimism. It's a label and it's an awesome goal. I want my dog to feel optimistic, to be confident, but how do I do that? I can't, sit them down on have them lie down on the sofa and give them counseling. I need to train them to do something. I need to reinforce behaviors. Now, there are a couple different kinds of reinforcement, of course. There's positive reinforcement that a lot of you are already using. That's where you give your dog something they love after they do a behavior, so they do more of it. So if your dog sits and you give them a treat, then they're more likely to sit in the future. And that's the kind of reinforcement that we want, because not only can we increase behaviors, like confident behaviors that we want to see, we're going to also create positive associations. Negative reinforcement, which is the removal of something unpleasant, can also result in the increase of behaviors that you like, possibly, but we're probably not going to get the same positive associations. So we're going to stick with positive reinforcement when we're talking about building confidence. So here's the definition that I proposed last time. And if this doesn't feel right to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would define confidence. But in dogs, if I'm going to build confidence, I think I'm going to use positive reinforcement to train or increase the frequency of behaviors or skills that I think the dog needs to sort of access more reinforcement in the world, to enjoy the world. And these are a lot of the behaviors that people came up with when they said, this means my dog is confident. Remember, playing, sniffing, relaxing. So positive reinforcement training of confident behaviors. So let me know what you think. If you think that is crazy and you think you have a different definition you like better, I'd love to hear it. Okay, some of you might recognize this. I've used a framework like this in the past to talk about places that we have the opportunity to intervene when we're trying to change problem behavior. I've changed this up a bit, and I'm hoping this framework will be helpful for talking about how to train new behaviors. So when we're going to build a new behavior, and here we're talking about confidence, so we're going to build some behavior we think is necessary or shows confidence. In this case, play, we're talking about this week. We need to know, what is the behavior? If I'm watching my dog, how do I know if they have done it? And how do I know what to reinforce? So what does the behavior look like? When and where do I want my dog to be able to do this behavior? So the context or the scenario. And then why? What do I want my dog to get out of doing this behavior? Like I said, this week, we're going to use that play example. Several people mentioned that when they see their dog playing, that's something they want to see more of in their fearful dog. It's something that they think of when they think of building confidence. And so we're going to take play and stick it into this framework here for building new behaviors. So that first point there, what does it look like? We have to decide, what does play look like? Or at least, what does the play that we want to build in our dogs look like? So this is kind of up to you, but here were some suggestions from the support group. Play, when I want my dog to play more, I think of them playing tug with toys, maybe chewing on toys or chews, chasing toys around, playing fetch, running around, wrestling or chasing other dogs. If you have a different play that is your dog's favorite, I'd love to hear it in the comments. So for increasing play, we're going to pop in under the what. What does it look like? In our framework, engaging with toys, people, or dogs. And that's obviously really too general to train still. We'll get down to a specific example in a second. The next step is, okay, well, when do we want our dogs to play? If we're thinking of playing in certain situations as showing confidence, or that's something we want our dogs to do, is to be able to play in some situations, when is it that we want them to play? When and where? And what I've gathered from the group, which makes sense, is that most people feel that if their dog could play in situations that they currently feel nervous in, they show fearful behaviors in, like around visitors, outdoors, in novel locations or situations, that would, to them, be a piece of building confidence. So I want my dog to be able to play in situations that currently they find kind of scary. All right, so we've got engaging with toys, people, and dogs is what we're going to do to increase confidence, and we're going to try to train our dogs to do those things in scary or new situations. And finally, we have to ask, okay, what is the dog going to get out of it? Why do dogs play? Why do we want our dogs to play? If you are designing the training, you get to decide what the consequences are, at least in part. I think a lot of us, when we think of play, we think of automatically reinforcing behaviors. So basically, something about what the dog is doing is inherently enjoyable or produces something enjoyable to them without us having to, give them a treat or something like that. It's just fun. They just enjoy it. So that's one result the dog could get from the play that we're trying to teach them. Any kind of attention or social interaction can be reinforcing. Of course, it depends. Some dogs will find that punishing, but many dogs who are not fearful, at least of their own family, will find attention or interaction in play reinforcing. So it doesn't have to just be, the ball bouncing around itself that's fun, but also, mom or dad talking to them, praising them, that kind of thing. And then you can use something tangible like treats as a reinforcer for play behaviors also. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. And these aren't mutually exclusive. These can all be happening at the same time. All right. So here's our training plan in the big picture, anyway, for increasing confidence, by which we mean increasing play behaviors in a way that we think is related to confidence, or what many people said they thought meant confidence. And that is engaging with toys, people, or dogs in scary or new situations. And the dog is getting automatic and or social reinforcement. So either the, throwing the ball around or whatever they're doing is just fun in and of itself and not sort of being provided by a person or another dog, or there's some reinforcement being provided by you or whoever the dog is playing with. All right. Any questions so far? Go ahead and put them. I wasn't sure if this was a little too maybe abstract or theoretical, but we're going to get into an example now to help make it a little more concrete so you can start thinking about how you can increase play for your dog. All right, so Little Pancake, some of you have seen starring in various of our videos. That's our little tripod Chihuahua mix. When he first came to us, he didn't do much of anything, including play. He was kind of afraid of everything. And so one aspect of play that we deliberately tried to increase play behavior is engaging with toys. And where did we want him to do it? Well, honestly, anywhere. In the beginning, we would take any kind of play anywhere as a sign that, he was doing better than he had been. We wanted to find things that he would enjoy. So we had some good stuff, some reinforcement in his life. But we also, as he continued to improve and become braver and able to tolerate a wider range of experiences, we also wanted him to be able to engage with toys around people, because this was a useful behavior. It's nicer for your dog to, say, play with a frisbee or a ball or chew on a food toy rather than, in Pancake's case, either hiding or barking and lunging at them. So it can be an alternative behavior to fearful or aggressive behaviors. And then what kind of reinforcement did we want? What did we want Pancake to get out of the play that we were encouraging? At least early on, I was really focusing on automatic reinforcement. Because Pancake was afraid of everyone, including me, I needed some kind of play activity that he could kind of collect his own reinforcement, get good stuff out of without me being too close or having to provide anything. All right, so Pancake learns to play early on. And if you've got a dog who's this fearful, this is not a bad way to start. His kind of safe zone is where we started, his pen in my office, which is where he lived in the beginning with us. We always had a wide variety of toys out and available that we had no idea what he might like, what kind of activities or toys he might like. So we just put a bunch of different stuff out and watched him. Luckily, after a while, I had a camera that allowed me to watch him without being there too close and scaring him. And I chose food toys. He also had non-food toys available, but I included a lot of food toys with good food in them, good, smelly dog treats, because it was something that could produce reinforcement. Like Pancake could make reinforcement happen, could, bump the treat ball, treat would fall out, and he could collect it without me having to be involved. And that was important because in the beginning, he didn't tolerate really me being in the same room with him very well. Okay, I'm going to go to video. Okay, so this is the very first video I have of Pancake playing, or at least engaging with a toy. Sorry for the angle. I had to video. I didn't yet have my remote camera set up, and I had to video from another room. But he has a soft rubber treat ball in there, and there's some food in it. He would not do this if I were in the room, but he was just starting to check things out. And he was getting food out of it, so there was, at least in theory, some reinforcement happening. Once I got the camera up, I could get a little bit better video when I wasn't in the room. This is a soft cloth. I think it's made by Kong cloth toy that you can put a few treats in and kind of Velcro it shut. This was a popular one with him. So these are just some examples of early play and engaging with toys. A snuffle mat, not everyone thinks of as play, more of sniffing maybe, but if you haven't tried a snuffle mat for fearful dogs, they're a nice intro to both sniffing and food toys. I haven't yet met a dog who doesn't like snuffle mats at all. They're easy, so that if the dog engages with the snuffle mat, they collect reinforcement and treats pretty quickly. So they get a nice high rate of reinforcement as long as you have enough treats in there. And it can be a nice first object to encourage interaction with. And you don't have to be there anywhere nearby. So that's kind of nice. You see he's got like at least four food toys in here right now. This was the hard plastic toys were a little bit later for him to experiment with. They make more noise on the floor, although he does have that rubber padding down there. And it doesn't have to be a dog toy. So I tried some other things. Like my dogs really like yogurt containers when they still have some yogurt in them, at the end. So he got pretty into yogurt containers. This is some rubber toy. I don't even think it has food in it. So we love to see this, right? I mean, not only, is he more confident? Okay, I don't really know. But to me, a dog who's playing makes me feel like a little better about their welfare. And that's something I worried about a lot with Pancake, because he wouldn't interact with anybody. He didn't like my dogs. He didn't like us. And I was hoping that down the road we'd be able to use some of these play behaviors in, sort of useful other situations. All right, so we did that stuff in his safe zone with food toys, mostly to get that automatically produced reinforcement. Some ways that you can slowly sort of migrate or expand, generalize this behavior to other situations that might help your dog. One is to introduce small environmental changes. So one thing we did with Pancake, if you saw in all those videos that he was in a small pen, it's not too small, but it basically fenced off most of the room from him. And then he had a dog door to go outside. And that was kind of a safety barrier for him. It seemed like we would put blankets or towels over that fence, especially early on, to make it seem kind of more enclosed. He could hide behind them, but he could kind of peek around if he wanted to. I wanted to start removing that so that he had more access to the room and could explore more. But in the beginning, he was kind of scared to leave that area. When we moved the fence, he wouldn't venture out. And so one way, you saw some of it last time with, we did some scent work games, but also starting to put food toys out around the room. I think this is the very first time he moved away from sort of the tarp there delineates where his pen was. And we moved the fence. I think this is the very first time he kind of ventured out to try to interact with something, with a food toy. Especially once your dog has had a pretty good history of reinforcement with some food toys, you can use the ones, maybe the favorite ones, to introduce some new areas. So outdoors was one area we worked on. Here's the backyard, and he's got a few food toys out there. This is a bonus too, by the way. We have a lot of you asking about nails with these dogs, that, how do you cut or trim their nails when you can't touch them? This is something we did early on. I was training him to do a nail board, but in the very beginning, he wouldn't take treats when I was in the room. So it was really hard for me to do positive reinforcement training with him. So we always, as soon as he was comfortable working with food toys, we then put food toys outside for all his meals so that he was moving around on the concrete, which helped wear his nails down a little bit. So that's something to think about if you're in this situation. Can you give them some kind of abrasive or rough surface sometimes and encourage them to move around and wear down their nails a little bit? Okay. So about a year ago, or not quite, maybe 8, 9 months ago now, we moved Pancake up to a different house, and it was pretty traumatic for him. He'd been slowly making progress in this one place, um, but really hadn't progressed much. He didn't really leave the room. He'd be in the room, and he'd started to venture in the backyard a little bit more into the greater backyard, but that was about it. And so packing him into the car and driving him to a new house was a pretty big deal for him. But he had all of this, in a way, really training. He's doing these behaviors, engaging with food toys and getting reinforced at home. And he had a lot of experience with that now, a long history. So that I think that really helped us as we moved to the new location. Those toys were familiar. He knew that interacting with them would produce food. And he definitely made progress faster than I expected. So this was his safe zone in the new house. So it's a similar pen. And here he is playing with this is one of the Westpaw Topples. It's a stuffable food toy. This is the big dog size. He has his own small dog size, but for some reason, all the dogs in our house want the size that's not for them. So we had lots of toys available, and he started engaging with them more. We could bring them into new rooms. This is a room that is not the room his safe zone is in. This encouraged him to move around and explore a little bit. And another thing you can think about as you use this kind of play training, trying to get play type behaviors reinforced in situations that you might find them useful, is to introduce people into the equation, especially if you have a dog who's a little bit afraid of people. We do this quite a bit actually with private training clients. If you've got a dog who is crazy for tennis balls or frisbees or whatever, a lot of times we'll have, new people come and toss the frisbee for the dog as long as it's safe to do so. So we slowly introduced more play with me in the room. And actually that play where he had that yellow ball just now, I was sitting there. And then also my husband. So I don't think I had a great clip, but I'll show you. Okay, so this is my husband's in the foreground, and I just zoomed in. And here Pancake is trying to extract the large dog, Bob-a-lot, from under the table. And so we always made sure, as he became braver and able to be out in this living room area, or as my husband sits at night to watch TV, that he had a lot of toys he could interact with there as well. All right, so why all of this? Talking about toys, reinforcement. We're talking about building confidence. And what we try to do all the time in that Facebook support group, which I'll give you the link to in a second if you're not in it, is to get people thinking about observable behaviors when they are establishing their goals for their dog. There's way too much wishy-washy stuff out there that I think is very confusing for those of you who are trying to train your dogs. If someone says you just have to build optimism or you just have to build confidence, okay, how am I supposed to do that? What do I reinforce when I'm trying to build confidence? And so I'd like you to reframe that in your mind as, okay, if I want my dog to be more confident, what I really want to do is use positive reinforcement to train skills, to train my dog to do behaviors that in situations that I think will help them. One, I would think of them as more confident if I saw them doing that, and maybe it will get them out into the world more and give them access to more fun, more opportunities to find other reinforcers in the environment. But you need to know what behaviors you're reinforcing. Otherwise, it's really easy just to get lost. We have a couple guest stars from the group of people who submitted video that I wanted to show you as inspiration. This is Genevieve's little dog. I actually don't know his name, but he is ridiculously adorable. And he started to play initially with toys when no one else was in the room. So this is some video of him bopping around with a toy. Probably some automatic reinforcement going on here. He's having a great time when he has space, right? When you're not in the room. And a lot of fearful dogs are like this early on. They won't play if someone's in the room. So cute. This is, I want to say Opie, who early on would not leave his little safe area with his blankie. We've been working on, or had been working on, some scent work with him. And here he is at first trying to decide if this squirrel toy is safe to approach. Looks right, he's stretching, his tail's down. He looks, I'm not 100% sure about this. Or she, rather. And then this is another video showing some more bold exploration and starting to get some playful body language. So cute. All right, so this is the link to our Facebook support group. It's facebook.com/groups/dogkindsupport. If you want more one-on-one guidance, there'll be a link on this video, at least in YouTube, and I'll try to remember to put it in the post for our monthly training membership, which is a really affordable way to get access to trainers and your questions answered. Yeah, he at least his pancakes is similar to Opie. Yeah, he was, I was convinced, because it took so long, that we would just be trying to provide the best life we could for essentially a captive wild animal in the beginning. And maybe that was, not optimistic enough on my part, but he was so slow to improve in the beginning. Let's see, my dog. So I'm just going to look at some comments here. If you have any questions about this, talking about building confidence, one, and the definition of confidence building we're doing this week is play in certain situations. How can I basically reinforce play behaviors in my dog? My dog wouldn't play for the first 4 months. And even today, she only plays outside for the most part. Yeah. Behavior is so often context specific. And we did have to work actively at getting Pancake to play in different contexts, in different locations. A lot of that was taking very tiny steps toward a new place, which might mean, we'd crack the gate or crack a door open. So he was playing sort of outdoor adjacent in the beginning, but he wasn't actually outdoors, using really high value food that was tempting to him and using his favorite toys. But he did eventually venture out. He's still, well, actually now he goes on walks and things. So he's much braver now than he used to be. Let's see. In the morning, when I'm putting on my shoes or sandals to take my dog outside, she'll play by rubbing up against my legs, rolling over on her back. She then chews on my hand or on a rubber toy bone. She does this every day. That's so cute. Occasionally, she'll take the bone a few feet away and chew it for a few minutes. But this is the only kind of indoor play she ever does. That's so interesting. I wonder if, maybe, chewing on the bone is automatically reinforcing, but I wonder if, when she's rubbing on your legs, maybe that feels good, or do you pet her, talk to her, give her some kind of social type, socially mediated reinforcement? Yeah, if you'd like more indoor play, you might be able to encourage it. Just think about where those are those specifics I'm talking about when you're trying to write a training plan or develop a training plan. Is what exactly, like, where would you want her to do more play? What kind of play? What toys? What would it look like? And how will I reinforce it? All right. I think that's all I have for today. Any other questions about play, building confidence? Remember, confidence is a label, so we're going to talk about instead reinforcing behaviors that we want to see. And play was one that a lot of people came up with when they said, when I think of a confident dog, I think of a dog who plays. So how can we increase play behavior? All right. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful week. I will be back normal day on Monday next week, and we'll talk more about confidence building, possibly some settling, relaxing mat work or something like that. Lori says this would be a different conversation, but Odin gets overexcited, which I see as a lack of confidence or experience. He can rush into other dogs too hot, or new toys as he can't control his excitement. Yeah. It's hard to know why exactly, but Lori, I wonder, does Odin, does he get a lot of opportunities to play with other dogs? And does he get new toys often? So this is it. This is a nice exercise in backing up and thinking about, okay, um, overexcited is something you hear a lot of dogs, but it's a label. What behaviors are we seeing that make us say he's overexcited, and then what would we like to see instead? So okay, so he does get a lot of playtime, which is great. Um, but I bet not all dogs enjoy his exuberant greeting behavior. So you think about how you would like him to greet other dogs, or how would you like him to interact with a new toy the first time? Um, and then think about how we can train that. You might have to start with something really, really easy. So, for instance, if normally, say you go to the dog park, you let Odin off leash, and he just busts in and bowls over the first dog he sees. Okay, that's a little bit much. What I would like him to do instead is to walk or run in, but then stop and sniff and not bowl bulldogs over. So one thing you might be able to do is, well, you have a few options. You could practice going into, say, the dog park after he's already played a while, and so his excitement is lower, his motivation to bowl other dogs over is less. And then so he gets lots of practice going in at a sort of in a calmer way, in a slower way to start out. One problem is that every time he rushes in at high speed, presumably it's being reinforced since he keeps doing it. And so, if you can think of a way to control that entrance, sometimes a leash helps and sometimes it doesn't help, but can you slow him down with a leash? Can you a lot of times at the animal shelter we used to use food and like just stick it right in their face or drop it on the ground just so they'd be like, whoa, what? And start and sniff and eat food on the way to meet another dog rather than just charging head on. You need really good stinky food though. We used usually freshly microwaved meatballs for that. Something else really smelly. But that kept them from practicing and having reinforced that behavior we didn't want, which is the charge going up to the dog. With a dog like Pancake, do you leave all the toys out so they're less intimidating, or do you have a rotation to try to keep them exciting? So we rotated them. Really the goal was more though to expose him to a wide variety to see what he chose to interact with. Because we had a camera on him all the time, that allowed us to see if he avoided a toy completely, or say he tried to interact and it did something and spooked him and then he avoided the toy. So early on, if I saw that, I say, I'm just going to pull this one out of the rotation for now. I want to build up a strong history of positive reinforcement for interacting with these toys before I push this again. But yeah, for some fearful dogs, any change in the environment, including you putting a new toy into the environment, is concerning. So for some dogs, you may need to leave them out, but don't put them like right next to their favorite spot if they might be afraid of them, right? We don't want them to feel like they can't get to their safe zone, but have them available, but kind of out of the way so they can go check them out if they want to, but they don't have to pass close to a new toy if it might scare them to get, say, to their crate, to their water, to you if they like to come to you. But some dogs only investigate things, are way more likely to investigate something if it's new in the environment. So it kind of depends on your dog. For Pancake, in the beginning, I would have like 4 or 5 food toys in his pen at once, and every day I might switch a couple out. Like I'd leave the ones in that he'd been interacting with, and ones that he completely ignored, I'd switch out for others. So I was just trying to investigate what he liked. And then after a while, once he was interacting pretty regularly with food toys, I did more wholesale rotating in and out new toys, just in an attempt to keep them interesting to him. Yeah, it's a really good question. You have to just kind of watch the dog and see is it helping or hurting my cause? Basically, am I getting more or less of the behavior I want when I leave a toy for several days, or versus if I when I first place it in? If your dog avoids it, then you might need to leave it for a while. But remember, just put it somewhere out of the way so that they're not forced to be close to it if they are concerned. All right. Any other questions about play, encouraging play? Um, if your dog isn't playing at all, I do really like scent work, and you can incorporate toys and objects into it. Remember, our scent work course is now self-paced online, the beginning course, just 3 classes. It's a great way to get started at home with your fearful dogs. So I would definitely check that out. It can get them moving around and exploring a little bit. And they can collect the good stuff, the treats, the reinforcement on their own. So you don't have to be involved if they don't want you to be. All right. Okay, guys, I will see you next week. Have a wonderful week. I will hopefully be back up in Tahoe. Our evacuation order ended before we left on our trip. So hopefully we'll be all settled and back home by next week. All right, folks. If you have questions, if you're watching this as a recording or you come up with something later, post it under the video wherever you're watching it and I'll get a notification. Join us in the membership. We do extra live Q&As and things in the membership every week, so we can give you a little extra one-on-one help. All right, everybody. Talk to you later next week.